Brian Hill, and I am one of the founders of Edovo. When I was growing up, my father taught in Folsom Prison in California. Many of you might have heard of that one. And at nights, he would bring home the essays of inmates that he had taught, and he'd read them to us like bedtime stories. And I remember feeling of the hopes and dreams of so many of these individuals and recognizing that many of them would never realize these dreams, but so many lacked the tools to achieve or accomplish anywhere close to what they had dreamed they could. But at that age, I had no idea the magnitude of the problem. So 12 million people cycle through our jails and prisons each year. We spend $72 billion, so 2.25 million is how many people are incarcerated on any given day. So we spend $72 billion incarcerating this population, give or take. It doesn't include courts, probation, parole, just on incarceration. And more than half will return a short time after being released. Recidivism, we're familiar with that in the room. That's a problem. Now, we've talked a lot about policing, we've talked about courts today, but I want to talk about prisons today. If there's two things I get across about prisons as you sort of make the case for why it is a fundamentally challenged system we have today, I would actually argue not to focus on the private-public argument. I think that's less important. I think what is fundamentally a challenge is number one, we have an assumption in America, or we've had an assumption for a long time, that locking people up improves public safety. And that is an assumption that needs to be questioned. Inherently, that needs to be questioned. The second thing is that when you take a population that is self-identified as a fairly poor decision maker, whether that's because they're hanging out with the wrong crowd, whether that's because they did something that was a bad decision, they made a bad decision, or did something malicious. When you take a population that has that challenge, abstracting the 30% of mental health patients within the facilities, but when you take that population and you put them in an environment where they make no decisions, that is cognitively and developmentally the worst thing you could possibly do. That arrested development concept is exactly what prison is all about. And so when you have, again, a self-identified poor decision maker going into an environment where the average person on the outside makes about 35,000 decisions a day, the average inmate on the inside makes about 6,000 decisions a day. That is not good. And then you spit them out 5, 6, 10 years later, and you expect this person who came in at 18, out at 25, is somehow going to perform in an environment having made no decisions for a decade and have no life experience, and somehow now they're employable, that they have family relationships and all these other things that need to develop. That's not happening. So that's what Edovo is trying to solve. We bring technology into jails and prisons. It is the one area that is left in America, arguably, collectively, that has no technology. And it's a green field, which allows us to do a lot of really cool things. We have started by bringing tablet technology in. So we are literally wiring up facilities all across the country now. We launch about a site a week at this stage, even though we're a young company. And we drop in wireless networks, access points across the place. So that way inmates now have a tablet in their hands that they can access everything from literacy to college degrees, treatment programming, substance abuse, cognitive behavioral therapy, religious material, legal information, all the things that they need to work on in an environment where they are not getting that. So if you're unfamiliar, very few people get programming in jail. It just doesn't happen as much as we'd like to believe it. You'll hear little articles here and there about a dog training program or this or that, and that captures maybe 10%, maybe. Generally, 1 out of every 5 will get some type of programming, but it might be couple hours a week, and that's just not sufficient. So this allows them daily access to hours of programming, and it's been incredibly fun to watch. Right now, we're about to launch in an Alabama facility that is in serious danger because fights and riots and things are happening internally. And what we see is not only does it have an effect from an educational and an outcome perspective from a cognitive side, but it has an incredibly powerful effect on bringing the sort of facility tension down. For the first time, they feel like they're human again. They have the ability to have autonomy and decision-making power. And so we see incidents of violence go near to zero. The place goes fairly quiet, which makes the officer's life easier, which is in our favor. And the third thing is that people begin to make real progress. When we launched, just to give you 2 anecdotal examples that are very cool, when we launched in Arkansas, we launched in a maximum security 23-in-1 lockup. So this is a segregated housing unit. And it's been really tough to figure out, number one, what's happening, how many people are in segregation in our country. But it's estimated about 6% or sometimes are locked up 23 hours a day and out 1. But to change that has been very tough. And so for the first time ever when we brought tablet technology in, it blew them away so much how engaged this audience was. For some reason, they're surprised that these are humans that care about doing things that are good. But they were so surprised at how effective it was that they started letting them out for hours a day. And so now the segregated population is now trading down into lower security systems or lower security environments where now they can be out of segregation. So it's cool to see just how, from a behavioral standpoint, how we can drive technology to change the operations of a facility. But we are literally changing the dynamic of correctional facilities across the country, and it is rapidly spreading. In the next 3 to 5 years, nearly every inmate will have a tablet or some type of technology in their hands on a daily basis. And that's the part that's most exciting. Education, in many ways, is the door in, but we know nothing about prisons today. We don't know anything that's going on in there. And access to technology in the hands of everyone on an individual level is going to help us understand a lot more about what we can do, how we can change things, and hopefully, and what I tell all the directors and the governors when I talk to them is, at some point you're going to look around the room and see 1,000 people sitting on a tablet for 8 hours a day and wonder, why are they sitting in here? They can do this at home. And that's really the goal. Our goal at Edovo, aside from creating that autonomy and giving more decision-making power, is we only care about 3 metrics: decrease cost, decrease population, decrease recidivism. That's what we focus on, because in doing that, all the rest will shake out. So that's Edovo. Look forward to your questions.